This happened in the summer of 2019, deep in the Veracruz rainforest, about 40 minutes outside the town of Catemaco. I was 23 years old, visiting my Theo's coffee farm with my younger brother, Daniel, who was 19 at the time. The property was massive, maybe 80 acres of dense jungle and coffee plantations, with this old colonial-style house sitting right in the middle. The house had these thick adobe walls painted yellow that were peeling in places, terracotta roof tiles covered in moss, and wooden shutters on every window that creaked whenever the wind picked up. There were 3 bedrooms upstairs, connected by a long hallway with floorboards that groaned under your weight. And downstairs was the kitchen, a living room with furniture from the 70s, and this covered porch that wrapped around the entire front of the house. Beyond the porch, the coffee plants started immediately, row after row disappearing into the shadows of enormous ceiba and mahogany trees. My Theo had warned us about wandering too far into the forest, but he said it so casually, the way you'd mention it might rain later, that we didn't think much of it. We'd arrived on a Thursday afternoon, July 18th to be exact, after a 4-hour drive from Jalapa in my Theo's beat-up 2004 Ford pickup. The plan was simple: spend 2 weeks helping with the harvest, learn about the coffee process, disconnect from our phones since the signal was basically non-existent anyway. My Tio lived alone on the property after my tia passed away 3 years earlier. He was in his late 60s, lean and weathered from years of farm work, with these hands that were all calluses and rope burn scars. He had a routine that never changed. Wake up at 4:30 in the morning, brew coffee in this ancient percolator that gurgled and hissed, walk the property line before sunrise with his machete and his dog, a nervous mutt named Canelo who was scared of everything. Then breakfast at 6:30, work until noon, siesta, more work until sunset. Dinner was always at 7 sharp, rice and beans and whatever meat he'd prepared that morning. The first few days were uneventful. We picked coffee cherries in the morning heat, our fingers stained red and sticky, while howler monkeys screamed in the canopy above us. The forest was loud during the day, insects buzzing, birds calling, branches snapping as animals moved through the undergrowth. But at night, it got quiet in this wrong kind of way. Not peaceful quiet, waiting quiet. On our 3rd night there, Sunday the 21st, Canelo started acting strange. He wouldn't come inside the house after dinner, just stood at the edge of the porch staring into the coffee plants, whimpering. My Tio called him 3 times before giving up and leaving him outside, which apparently wasn't unusual, but I noticed he locked the front door that night, something he hadn't done before. Daniel mentioned hearing footsteps on the roof around 2 in the morning, light and quick, like a child running back and forth across the tiles. I'd heard it too, but figured it was an animal. During breakfast the next morning, my Tio was quieter than usual. He kept glancing toward the tree line while he ate, and when I asked him about it, he just said, "The forest is active right now. Don't go past the markers." The markers were these cairns of stacked stones placed every 50 meters or so around the cultivated area, supposedly marking the boundary between the farm and the wild jungle. That afternoon, while we were working in the eastern section, Daniel found a small circle of mushrooms growing in a perfect ring, maybe 2 feet in diameter, right between 2 coffee plants. My Tio saw it and immediately told us to move to a different section. He wouldn't explain why, just said, "Don't step in those. Don't even look at them too long." Everything changed on Tuesday, July 23rd, around 3:15 in the afternoon. Daniel and I had finished our work early and decided to explore a bit, staying within the markers, obviously, or so we thought. We were following this narrow path between the coffee rows that seemed to lead toward a stream we'd heard running somewhere nearby. The temperature had dropped suddenly, and the light filtering through the canopy had this greenish tint to it that made everything look slightly underwater. That's when we heard it. Laughter. High-pitched, like children playing, coming from maybe 30 yards deeper into the forest. Daniel stopped walking and looked at me. "Do other people live out here?" he asked. I shook my head. My Tio had been clear about that. Nearest neighbor was 6 miles away. The laughter came again, closer this time, and I saw something move between the trees. small, maybe 3 feet tall, darting behind a trunk so fast I couldn't make out details, just the impression of something brown and child-sized. My skin went cold despite the humidity. I grabbed Daniel's arm and started backing up, but he was staring at the spot where the thing had disappeared. "Did you see that?" he whispered. I told him we needed to leave, now, but when I turned around, the path behind us looked different, wrong. The coffee plants weren't in rows anymore. They were scattered randomly, and the marker stones were gone. I should mention, my name is Fernanda, and I run this channel, The Hidden Archive, because of experiences like this one, things that don't make sense, that change how you see the world. What happened next is something I've never fully been able to explain. We started walking in what I thought was the direction back to the house, but after 10 minutes, we should have reached the clearing. Instead, we were deeper in the forest. The trees were thicker, older, covered in vines and moss that looked like it hadn't been disturbed in centuries. Daniel was getting scared now. I could hear it in his breathing, short and shallow. That's when we heard our names. Not shouted, whispered. "Fernanda, Daniel," coming from every direction at once, in voices that sounded almost like our mother, but not quite, like someone doing a bad impression. My hands started shaking. I pulled out my phone, no signal obviously, but the compass app was spinning wildly, the needle rotating continuously without settling. We kept walking, faster now, and I noticed the forest floor was covered in these tiny footprints, barefoot, child-sized, hundreds of them, all leading deeper into the jungle. Daniel grabbed my shoulder and pointed up. In the trees above us, maybe 15 feet high, there were shapes, 5, 6, maybe more. Small humanoid figures crouched on branches, watching us. They had these wizened faces, like old men, but with large black eyes that reflected the dim light. Their skin was brown and bark-like, and they wore what looked like leaves and moss. Chaneques. The word came to me from childhood stories my grandmother used to tell. Little forest spirits that led people astray, made them lose their way, sometimes made them disappear completely. I told Daniel not to look at them, to keep moving, but he was frozen. One of them dropped from a branch and landed in front of us, maybe 20 feet away. It was no more than 3 feet tall, hunched over, with these long fingers that touched the ground. It tilted its head and smiled, revealing tiny pointed teeth, and then it spoke. "Están perdidos?" Its voice sounded like rustling leaves. "Are you lost?" More of them dropped from the trees, forming a loose circle around us. My heart was slamming against my ribs so hard it hurt. I remembered something my grandmother had said, that you had to wear your clothes inside out to confuse them, to break their magic. I ripped off my shirt, turned it inside out, and put it back on, telling Daniel to do the same. He looked at me like I was crazy, but he did it, fumbling with his t-shirt while keeping his eyes on the creatures. The moment his shirt was reversed, something shifted. The forest sounds came back, the normal bird calls and insect noise. The Chaneques screamed, this high-pitched shriek that made my teeth hurt, and they scattered into the undergrowth. The path appeared in front of us, clear and obvious, leading directly back toward the farm. We ran. I don't know how long we ran, branches whipping our faces, roots trying to catch our feet, but eventually we burst through the tree line into the coffee plantation. The house was visible in the distance, smoke rising from the chimney. We were gasping for air, covered in scratches and dirt. But when I looked back at Daniel, really looked at him, something was wrong. His eyes were different. The color was right, that same hazel brown they'd always been, but there was something behind them, something looking out that wasn't entirely my brother. He was smiling, this wide, inappropriate smile, and he wouldn't stop. I said his name and he turned to me, still smiling, and said in a voice that was slightly off pitch, "I'm fine, hermana, let's go inside." Every instinct I had was screaming that this wasn't right. We walked back to the house in silence, and when we got to the porch, my Theo was waiting. He took one look at Daniel and his face went pale. "Where did you find him?" he asked me, not taking his eyes off my brother. I explained what happened, the laughter, getting lost, the Chaneques, turning our shirts inside out. My Theo's jaw clenched. "Mija," he said quietly, "Your brother's shirt is right side out." I looked. He was right. Daniel's shirt was normal, not inside out like mine still was, which meant he hadn't actually turned it, which meant the thing wearing my brother's face stopped smiling. Its expression went blank, empty, and then it turned and ran, not toward the forest, but into the house, up the stairs, footsteps pounding overhead. My tío grabbed his machete from beside the door and told me to stay outside. I didn't listen. I followed him in, up those creaking stairs to the bedroom Daniel and I had been sharing. The door was open, the window was open, and sitting on Daniel's bed was a figure made of sticks and leaves and moss, crudely shaped like a human, wearing Daniel's clothes from that morning. A changeling, an effigy, but no Daniel. My tío said something in a dialect I didn't understand, some prayer or curse, and then he grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. "When did the sun go down?" he asked me. I looked out the window. It was dark, completely dark. But we'd come back from the forest in daylight, I was sure of it, hadn't we? My tío was already moving, pulling me back downstairs, grabbing supplies, a backpack, rope, salt, dried herbs. "We have maybe an hour," he said. "After that, he's theirs." We went back into the forest, my tío leading with the machete, me following close behind. He was calling out in that dialect again, not to me, to them, negotiating maybe, or threatening, I couldn't tell. The forest was alive with movement, rustling in every direction, whispers that sounded like wind but weren't. We found him maybe half a mile in, sitting at the base of a ceiba tree, staring at nothing. My tío immediately drew a circle of salt around the three of us and started burning the herbs. The smell was acrid, medicinal. Daniel looked up at us, and his eyes were his own again, but they were full of tears. "I can't remember how to get back. I can't remember which way is out." My tío poured salt into Daniel's hands and made him eat it. Then he tied the rope around Daniel's waist, around mine, around his, connecting us. "Don't let go," he said. "No matter what you see or hear, don't let go." Getting out was harder than getting in. The forest fought us. The path kept disappearing, reappearing in the wrong places. We'd walk for 10 minutes and end up exactly where we started. Shapes moved in our peripheral vision, always just out of clear sight. The whispers became voices we recognized, our mother, our father, friends calling our names, begging us to come help them. Daniel tried to untie himself twice. I had to physically hold him while my tío chanted and threw more salt. But the rope worked. The connection between us held. When we finally broke through to the coffee plantation, it was almost midnight. We'd been in there for 7 hours. Ganello was waiting at the tree line, barking frantically. The moment we crossed the boundary, Daniel collapsed. We carried him inside, and my tío made him shower in water mixed with rue and basil, made him put on completely new clothes, burned the ones he'd been wearing. Then he drew symbols on the doorways and windows with ash. We didn't sleep that night. We sat in the living room, all of us, lights on, while things scratched at the walls and roof. Voices called from outside, sometimes sounding like us, sometimes like people we loved, sometimes like nothing human at all. When the sun rose, it stopped. My tío called my mother that morning and told her we were coming home early. He didn't explain why, just said it was important. We packed in silence and left before noon. 2 weeks after we got back to Jalapa, Daniel started having seizures. The doctors couldn't find the cause. MRIs, blood tests, everything came back normal, but he'd collapsed without warning, his eyes rolling back, speaking in that dialect my tío had used, saying things none of us could understand. It lasted for 3 months before it finally stopped. But here's the thing that still keeps me up at night. When we were reviewing the photos on my phone from that trip, there was one I didn't remember taking. It was dated July 23rd, time-stamped at 3:47 p.m., right when we would have been lost in the forest. It showed Daniel standing alone in a clearing, surrounded by those circles of mushrooms, dozens of them. But Daniel wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking up at the canopy, where you could see faces. Dozens of small, wizened faces staring down at him, and he was smiling that wrong smile. I deleted the photo immediately, but sometimes I still see it when I close my eyes. My tío died last year. heart attack while working his fields. At the funeral, one of his old friends pulled me aside and asked if Daniel ever got his shadow back. I didn't understand what he meant. The old man just shook his head and said, "Watch him in the sunlight, really watch him." So I did, and I swear to you, on everything I believe in, Daniel's shadow is wrong. It's too short during the day, too long at night, and sometimes, just sometimes, it moves independently, just slightly, just enough to notice if you're paying attention. Life before and after that day in Veracruz are two very different things. I don't walk in forests anymore. I don't trust paths that appear too convenient or sounds that seem familiar. And I watch my brother every day, watching for signs of what might have come back with us, what might still be there behind his eyes during certain moments when he thinks no one is looking. The Chaneques didn't just take him that day. They replaced something, left something behind, changed something fundamental, and I don't think we'll ever really know what. If you've had your own experience with the Chaneques or other forest spirits in Mexico, share it in the comments below. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the Hidden Archive and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching. I'm Fernanda, and I'll see you in the next one.